Good morning, and thank you for being with us. The governor has laid out his plan. The leaders of the state legislature have held their press conferences about their plan. So what kinds of changes are they hoping for, and how to make life in Connecticut easier and better for residents? Channel 3 chief political reporter Susan Raff and CT Insider's columnist and senior editor Dan Haar are here with their thoughts. So I said in the intro, the governor has his plan. The leaders have had their press conferences. So you two, what's actually going to happen?
I think it's really early to tell right now. You know, a lot of the heavy lifting happened in the first year of the budget. You know, we saw historic tax cuts last year, more comprehensive gun legislation. This year, they've got to get electric vehicles passed. But one of the more controversial proposals, I think, is paid sick leave, that they want to expand that for all companies now, not just 50 and more. And there's going to be a lot of pushback. A lot of these companies simply say that they want the ability to negotiate benefits for their employees. So that's going to be a big issue.
And another issue we've heard a lot about is housing, Dan, but it might be a different take than we've heard in the past. What's the housing fight going to be?
Yeah, remember, in even-numbered years that are not election years, they can talk about the really tough issue of desegregation and regional, changes in where people live. That doesn't get touched in an election year, never. And so this year the question is tenants' rights. Which is a hot button enough issue. The Democrats would like to see guarantees that a landlord must offer you a new lease when your lease runs out unless there's a reason, right? And that has unintended consequences, of course, because how do you define a reason? And there's another one involving people who have committed crimes. Should they be allowed to be rejected in leases? That's another question.
But it's interesting, the governor in his State of the State address really brought home the need for more housing in Connecticut, said we don't have enough, certainly affordable housing, more people are moving into the state. But I think Dan is right, years and years of trying to give towns and cities incentives to create more housing really has not worked. So I'm not sure what the governor has up his sleeve to make that happen.
I think we have to separate affordable housing from workforce housing. Affordable housing is, as Susan said, is not working, and that's the big picture. The workforce housing is let's just get more housing for people that want to move into the state, not subsidized, and not in any other policy changes to get more housing. The governor has $430 million per year in each of the two-year budget, including this year and the year starting July 1st, for housing programs, and that mainly goes to rehab and things like
the transit-oriented
exactly.
Hartford has 5,000 new apartments. That's great, and that's for the workforce. But there's a greater need, really, for affordable housing, and a lot of the cities and towns, especially the rural ones, suburban ones, they don't want dense housing.
And he talked about the CRDA model and trying to expand that, and he talked about that with me last week on this show. But at the same time, like you say, in an election year, there's only so far anybody's going to go in that legislature.
The money is in place because it's bonding, and that's not as controversial. In housing, there's the non-controversial stuff. You want to spend money through bonding and build more housing, there's less controversy about that.
Well, let's talk about spending money that has a lot of controversy, and that's education funding.
Oh, yeah.
There's a big fight brewing about what needs to be done and how to pay for it. Where's that going to end up?
Governor is very strong about early childhood or child care. Made it a point last year and again this year. But the funding from that really comes from elementary school education. It comes from magnet schools. It comes from VOAG programs. That's creating a lot of pushback. There are a lot of hearings this week on that. They want to create not just quality child care, but they also want to make it more affordable. They're going to expand the income guidelines so that a family of, say, 3 making $70,000 would be able to qualify for that. So that's great. But the fact remains, especially in southeastern Connecticut, there aren't enough child care centers.
Nobody doesn't want early child care punched up, and that also includes house-based. It's programs to get more people doing child care in the home that's safe and affordable. Nobody doesn't want that. The Democrats are looking for ways to get out from under the guardrails so that they can spend that money and give the schools all the money that was promised. And a point to be made that the governor probably made every day this week.
And it's not a partisan issue.
That's right. It's not a partisan issue.
But they don't like the fact that the money is coming from other programs to pay for it.
It's not. The school his point is that it's not coming from other programs. The school funding not only was in place from last year, but increased from last year. What is not coming is additional money that was waived in the budget this year,
right,
and that their enrollment is a little bit down, and they're going to magnet schools. So it's complicated, but the governor is saying you're getting more money, not less.
30 million, I think.
30 million more.
Car tax is another big issue. There was this whole, working group going to come up with it, and they kind of said, nah.
Pardon the pun, there's not enough gas in the tank to take it to the finish line. Senator Rahman had a task force. They had several meetings. And, it's a good concept. Connecticut's car taxes are very regressive. I mean, it depends where you live. You pay the same amount of money. You don't. It depends where you live. But the problem, I think, is that the 800 or 900 million that it generates for cities and towns, there's no plan on the table to replace that money. Where would they get the money? And I'm not sure that has any juice.
What's wrong, the policy or Susan?
The idea that Connecticut's car taxes are regressive is true from between towns. That is, Hartford pays way more than Greenwich for the same exact car. Within a town, and this is really important that people need to understand, within a town, car taxes are very progressive. If I live in a high-tax town and I drive a beat-up old car, which I do, both things, and they take away the car tax completely, I'm paying more for my house. Why should I? Why should I pay more for my house? The car tax is progressive within the borders of any given town.
So solve the problem yourself. Be like Dan and drive an older car.
Exactly.
What are some of the other big issues? EV, we talked about that leading up to the session. Will it get some time at the Capitol?
Governor says there's going to be a proposal on the table. As you know, he had to withdraw it last year because there was a lot of pushback. They want to ban the sale of new gas-powered cars by 2035. People are like, oh my God, no, you can't do that. Doesn't mean you can't own one, but you wouldn't be able to buy one. And he wants to follow California standards. Some feel that's too restrictive. I think they'll come up with a plan, something like a 3-year revision. They take a look, make sure charging stations are the big deal. They have to come up with enough of those, build those, and have them ready to go.
Less than a minute left, Dan.
The advocates for the reform think that the 3-year revision, the 3 years is in 3 years we look back and say, is this working? And if it's not, we're going to dump it. The advocates for it are saying that that's not legal. You can't do that. So it's a tough issue. The longer they wait in the session, the harder it gets to pass. They needed to get it done right now.
But they do that so often. They wait sometimes to the last minute to take up big issues, which is really unfortunate because then it's crunch time. So it would be better if they took it sooner than later. It's a short session. We'll see what happens.
Got to get it done before all the bills go to the Capitol in April.
And we'll be watching. You guys will be reporting back on what's happening. We appreciate you both being here. Dan Haar, Susan Raff, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Great to be here.